So I just spoke to a humanitarian aid worker and someone who's lived in Syria, Abdullah Jabbar. I will link down his socials. He's on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, you name it, he's probably there. And he explained the current situation and the history of the Syrian conflict. So without further ado, would you like to tell us where it all started?
So the history of the Syrian revolution started in 2011 or early 2011 if I'm corrected. And subhanAllah, the way it started, most people think is the rebels attacked Bashar al-Assad and the war started like that. But
Mhm.
that's not the case. What happened was the Arab Springs were going on in other countries around Syria. Of course, war was going on for those countries. Two little children in the town of Dar'a went to their school and wrote on the wall, "Your turn will come, O doctor." Now, O doctor or doctor was a nickname for Bashar al-Assad. It was basically, your turn is going to come, Bashar. And as kids do things that, subhanAllah, sometimes they don't think about. What did Bashar do in retaliation, though? He sent his troops to the school, picked up the two little kids, and kidnapped them. Now, after kidnapping them, the families were frantic, asking where their children are, and anybody would be in that situation. Once they're asking where their children are, they receive their children back tortured and dead in body bags. Now, obviously, this didn't have happen in like the span of 2, 3 days. This happened over a little while. So people, of course, are upset. Now, what you have to understand about Syria is very tribal. Um, in a town, for example, like Dara, everybody knows each other. It's, I would say, it's how the UK is in some areas, maybe like up north, where everybody knows each other. Every neighbor knows each other. Everybody. So when your neighbor's kid is hurt, a kid that you've seen grown up your whole life, when you know your cousin who's next door, do you understand? It's all this family, all these people are linked together. Of course, they were upset. So the people decided to go out and protest against Bashar al-Assad. And when I say protest, it was a peaceful protest. This is not bearing arms. This is not nothing like that. The families were hurt and they wanted to get justice. They wanted to know why this happened to their kids.
And this was something that was going on in a lot of Arab countries. This was at the time of the Arab Spring, wasn't it?
So what happens is while they go out to protest, Bashar al-Assad gives his army, the SSA, the Syrian Arab Army, the rule or to what do you call it, the command to fire at all protesters.
Mhm.
So if you go back and look at the history or the videos, you'll see sometimes they're using water cannons to blast the protesters. Sometimes they're firing at the protesters like the protesters are opposition, not like their families asking for their kids. So some of them, part of the Syrian army, were like, no, wait a second, we not signing up for this. Do you understand? We are not gonna go. And again, it's in one town. So people that are in that town are also from the town themselves. The army are also from the town themselves. They were like, wait a second, we're not about to just kill our own relatives, etc. So they switched sides. They decided, you know what? We're gonna take our weapons, we're gonna take the training that we have from the Bashar army, and we're gonna go and fight against them. And they created the Free Syrian Army. Now, the Free Syrian Army was part of the defected what do you call it, army troops from Bashar, and also people that were looking for justice from the Syrian people themselves. And in the early days, subhanAllah, you would hear stories. So I went there in 2013 as a humanitarian aid worker, and I would hear stories from children about how their fathers went out with hunting rifles because they didn't have like military weapons or anything like that to go and fight for the lands and hopefully hold and make and allow safety for their families back at home.
What before you carry on, do you want to kind of explain who is Bashar al-Assad and why do people despise him so much?
Bashar al-Assad was the governing body or the prime minister of Syria. The what do you call it? Whatever you want to call it, president, prime minister, the head body of Syria.
Mhm.
He took leadership from his father, Hafiz al-Assad, who in the in his time, subhanallah, in his time, subhanallah, done a lot of massacres as well. There's a famous massacre, the massacre of Hama, if I'm to be exact, where, and you can fact check this, where he went in with bulldozers and smashed the whole town, killing every single person there. So these are the things.
So they were both father and son were both dictators.
Both dictators and both known for their crimes. It's not like this stuff was.
Were they elected or did they just come into power?
Oh, Hafiz al-Assad, as far as I'm aware, came into power over a coup. When it comes
Okay.
to the earlier like days of Syria and obviously pre-Bashar, I'm not as versed as I am obviously with Syria's situation now. And inshallah, I'm gonna do more of my own research. But as far as I'm aware, he came in as a military coup and became the leader of Syria. And then Bashar al-Assad, his son, got elected as the leader. But then again, obviously later on, like I mentioned, once now these groups had formed, once now the people were opposing Bashar al-Assad, they were saying, you know what, we don't want you as our leader, and we want you out. But of course, he decided, you know what, that's not gonna happen. You can't just get rid of me. This is my country, and I'm staying in power. And also to add to what was going on in the time of Bashar and what he was known for himself, he was known for having prisons that were underground that people would go missing to and never ever return. That was a sign of, yeah, like at least you got your kids back. Do you understand? Because other families still to this day, subhanAllah, don't know where their family members are. And then on top of that, Syria itself, even though Alhamdulillah it had a lot of people going to study, etc. For the Syrians though, it was a different situation. They were not allowed to grow their beards. They were not allowed to practice Islam openly, and they were not allowed to kind of overstep a certain boundary that Bashar al-Assad had set for their Islamic principles, if that kind of makes sense.
So it was kind of like a constant state of oppression for them. And since when has this been in place?
Years before the revolution, years before everything kind of kicked off.
So where would you when what sort of year would you give that?
Not too sure. I wouldn't be able to say for exact.
Was it the 2000s or 2010s?
Yeah, I would say 2000s. Like previously, I went to Syria in 2006, and that was the case when I was there. I was in Damascus myself as a child. I studied in Damascus schools. My father and mother went there to go and what do you call it? To go and teach us Arabic because of course every family wants to go. So foreigners, like I said, foreigners were going there to, learn the Arabic language, to build up on their Islamic knowledge. And there are a lot of shuyukh, a lot of people that come from Syria, but for the Syrian people, it wasn't the same. Even my father, subhanAllah, had a big beard, used to wear the thobe, and dress like a Muslim. And the Syrian people, out of their love for him, of course, used to say to him, "Look, bro, like you don't want to be walking around like that because issues are gonna come your way." And subhanAllah, the reason why we ended up coming back from Syria in the end was because the Syrian mukhabarat, what is what they call the intelligence forces, um, like close to what we have of the MI5, or in America you got the FBI, etc., came to our house and said to my father, "Listen, we don't want you in our country. If you want to go and fight and do whatever you want and live out your Islam, go to Iraq, and we will let you go to Iraq, but not in Syria, please. Just leave us alone." At the time, they asked my father where he's from. He said Pakistan at first, and they were like, "Yes, we hit the jackpot. We can, Pakistan's not going to care about this guy. We make him
Send
go
it,
missing."
send him over.
As he said he's British, they were like, "Okay, go back to your country. Just leave us. Just go." So Alhamdulillah, I managed to come back to the UK.
So how long did you spend in Syria? Because I had seen videos as far as what was it? They said they were posted in 2017, but I'm guessing they were a bit older than that because you don't look like you were that old in 2017.
So the videos in my newer videos,
Your older ones, your oldest. Your oldest are like 6, 7 years old.
2014, 2013. So in when I went to Syria previous before the war, that was 2006 with my father and mother to 2007. I stayed there for about a year and I came back. We took all our family members. We went like on trips coming back and forth from the UK. Of course, the reason why I'm back in the UK, or the main reason is because I'm a heart patient. So I used to do that regularly from there before. Then during the war in 2013, I decided, or not myself, but my mom decided to go to Syria to help her brother, who is my uncle, or my mom, or for anybody that understands the Urdu language. Um, and he is a famous humanitarian aid worker. He traveled to Palestine on four different or three different occasions. He was kidnapped by the Israeli forces once. He was kidnapped by the Jordanian forces once. He was also beaten up by the uh, what do you call it? By the Egyptian forces at the Rafah crossing, going into Palestine once. So he's somebody that, mashallah, has a lot of eyes on him, and he's a known figure in terms of aid work. And then in 2012, he decided to move to Syria and never return. He said, "Look, for me, this is the job that I want to do. I want to make sure that I'm not just doing what a normal charity or aid worker would do and just give out primary aid and just help from back home. Rather, I want to live here with the people, break bread with the people, live and actually go through the struggle that they go through, and inshallah build a um Islamic project and a project for the people that can make them independent of charity." So that is exactly what we do. Our main focus of work is education and independency.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, alhamdulillah, like I done that from 2013 to what do you call it, 2022. So I normally say to people, I went to Syria for 10 years, but it's a rounded up number. I went there for exactly 9 years.
And do you want to talk about the current situation? So what's currently going on?
So currently, um, different rebel factions inside Syria are now on the offensive, and they have basically traveled all the way to Aleppo city and taken it back from the Bashar regime. Now, why this is big news for the people in Syria is because in 2013, the rebel forces had already taken these areas. So they had all of these areas that are under them, except for like the major city of Aleppo. So they had the outskirts of the city. They were in areas like Salahuddin and others, but they hadn't got full control of the whole of the city yet.
And what's the significance of Aleppo?
Significance of Aleppo is one, it is a strategic point for whoever owns it. And number two, it's got the citadel. It's got a lot of history in that area. And everybody knows that subhanAllah, whoever holds that basically holds the key to Syria itself. Of course, it's not the capital city. Damascus is the capital, but Aleppo is built up and basically runs with history. So yeah, that's kind of the significance of it itself. Also, the other significance of it is that the route to Damascus, Latakia, Homs, and Hama are all in Aleppo. So there's two major um, motorways called the M4 and the M5, and they basically split into all of the areas surrounding it. So whoever has control, like I said, because it's such a strategic point, whoever has control of Aleppo will have those motorways, which will take them to the different areas. Hence why now the rebels have been able to get all the way to Hama um so fast, because that motorway is clear for them to just walk straight through. So yeah,
What the different countries that are involved? There's obviously Russia's involved. Turkey has backed the rebels. Iran is involved as well. Why are these foreign countries involved in what's going on in Syria?
the what do you call it? The defectors of the Bashar regime decided to make their own group called the Free Syrian Army. Now, the Free Syrian Army was the first rebel group to be born. They basically, as I said, used the hunting rifles and stuff that they had, or the arms that they'd taken from Bashar al-Assad to fight back against him. This birthed a kind of resistance for Syria, and now different factions and different groups were starting to be born. So you had a plethora of like different rebel forces and different groups inside Syria. So in 2013, when I went, there were so many to name. Trust me, like you had so many different groups that were just doing different things. Now, the two main ones that are still existent today are HTS, who were previously known as Jabhat al-Nusra, and the other one is the FSA. The FSA have kind of stayed through the test of time, but the FSA, what people don't understand about them is that they are kind of like an umbrella group. They have loads of different groups underneath them, so it's not just like one head and that's it. Everyone follows that group. Whereas HTS has one leader, Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani, and every single person in HTS follows him. Now, what's significant about HTS changing their name from Jabhat al-Nusra and what Jabhat al-Nusra was in the early days? Because until 2015, 16, there was no such thing as HTS. Jabhat al-Nusra was a group that was just a fighting force. So all they did was fight on the front lines against Bashar al-Assad, nothing else. Off of their group, because it was two friends at the time, Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani, who was the head of al-Nusra,
Mhm.
and his friend Baghdadi. And Baghdadi decided that, you know what? I don't want to run things like how you're running things, Mr. Jawlani. I want to make my own group. So he decided to make his own group and what we know of today, Dawlatul Islam, or what is called in the West, ISIS. Now, ISIS kind of birthed the reason for all of these governments to get involved. Now, one thing that people
It's funny, it's interesting you brought them up because I was going to ask about them later on. I was going to ask about their involvement and obviously the rumors of Israel's involvement being there. So this probably links into that.
Yeah, so this is kind of now chronological order. This is not what I explained in my video because my video was a brief kind of overview and a summarized overview of what's going on because when you start going into depth, people don't understand.
Yeah.
And I will mention a group later on that I haven't mentioned yet that will explain more of like how the rebels are pro-Palestine because there's a lot of questions about well, if you're pro-Syrian rebels, you can't be pro-Palestine, and the rebels are not pro-Palestine, but we'll get into that.
Okay.
So ISIS was born, and ISIS was the reason that more now the governments decided to come into Syria. And to be honest, I wouldn't necessarily just say that they're the exact reason because we know with any war, outside governments always want to be involved.
Mhm.
They always want to play. They always want to get involved on the ground and do something. The thing is, the only government at the time that was kind of involved more so was Turkey with the support of the rebels and Qatar, because Qatar was also supporting the rebels. And then also parts of the FSA, like I said, it's an umbrella organization, so groups inside it were proxies to America. So America was supporting them. Um, then America basically, when the rise of ISIS happened and they started inside Syria, and this is why people don't understand, oh, but all the groups are ISIS and they changed their names and this and that. No, the groups have been around from the beginning. ISIS came out and ISIS decided, you know what? If you're not with us, you're against us. And they decided anybody that doesn't follow us and doesn't give us bay'ah, or basically give us the pledge of allegiance, are kuffar. You
Mhm.
lot are not Muslim, and you basically, if you want to be a Muslim, you got to join us, in simple terms. So they decided to not only fight the Muslims inside Syria, including the rebel groups, including the civilians. SubhanAllah, personally, I've got many, many stories that I can share of ISIS fighting my own people. I'm talking about humanitarian aid workers, people that I know myself. SubhanAllah, one of my close friends who's a media editor, someone that used to go with me to do filming, etc., and help me with a lot of the projects on the ground. His younger brother, who was 14 at the time, was a Hafiz of Quran, and he was in a masjid with other Huffaz, Syrian Huffaz. And the masjid was, what do you call it, blown up by ISIS suicide bomber. So you can see from here that they did not care whether you are a Hafiz, whether you like Islam, whether you don't like Islam. For them, we do not care. We want every single person that doesn't follow us dead.
So even amongst these rebel groups, there are different dynamics as well.
These rebel groups. And this is what is. This is why people don't understand. So America, like I said, had their proxies in the FSA, and they used them along with what do you call it? Uh, along with Turkey to fight against ISIS. But what also happened was the coalition was getting involved because When ISIS formed their group, Jabhat al-Nusra decided to talk to their higher ups, who are Al-Qaeda, AQ, and told them that we are not going to follow ISIS. We want your leadership for us. Now, they weren't in control of no area. Like I said, they were just a fighting force. The group in control of Free Syria at the time, along with FSA, was Ahrar al-Sham. And Ahrar al-Sham is kind of a reason why Turkey is involved, because Ahrar al-Sham is a group that is the sister group to Hamas or the Palestinian resistance. They were basically interlinked. They were brothers. They basically believe in the same ideology like Hamas, that we have to go through the democratic rule and we have to get elected in and we have to fight for our people. And when I told you, the people of Syria loved Ahrar Sham, they had the hearts and minds of the people.
That rebel group.
That rebel group there. But why they're not around today is because one of their commanders was killed by ISIS, but 40 of their commanders were in an underground bunker in a meeting and they were killed by an unknown source. So whether that is America, whether that was ISIS, nobody knows.
So does that rebel group not exist anymore?
Basically, whoever was left started joining other groups, either went to HTS or went to FSA.
Who, from your knowledge, supports which resistance group?
In terms of what?
Like, in terms of the people, from your knowledge, which rebel group do they support?
The people support a bit of both.
Okay.
Do you understand? So you have some people that support FSA, some people that support HTS. But
But they're all predominantly against the regime.
oh yeah. That's what it is. Far and wide, the people are against the regime because they do not want the regime in power that basically oppressed them for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how it is. And I think, look, even if we started to dissect Palestine and what's going on there, it will be the same thing. People in Palestine would support different groups inside Palestine, but ultimately, and this is the consensus from the people and from the Syrians and from the Palestinians, they support the resistance. They do not want either the Israelis in power or Bashar al-Assad in power.
And how do you see this ending?
I see this ending, subhanAllah, is a difficult one because, like you said and like I said, there's so many people to play and there's so many, subhanAllah, heads involved. Um, I look like many people know, there is some sort of deal going on. Now, is it a Zionist deal? Like I said, I don't think so. I think that's too far-fetched. I think people are confused because they believe that and these are the groups that we haven't gone, or basically the outside forces that we haven't spoke about yet. Iran and Russia are linked to Bashar al-Assad and have an alliance with him. They believe that Israel has allowed the rebels to fight against Iran because Iran was fighting against Israel for the on behalf of the Palestinians.
Why do people believe that Israel has a part to play in this?
Like I said, solely based on the fact that, or two facts to be honest. One is totally nonsensical, and this is the thing that you will see most of the time in the comments, and this, and I mean this in the most respectful manner. These people need to go and check a map. Honestly, because the amount of comments I get saying, why do the rebels not attack Israel, is crazy. Israel have been attacking from the Golan Heights, and the Golan Heights is near the town of Quneitara. Quneitara is under Bashar's rule, and all of that border is the border of Israel and Bashar al-Assad. There's no way for the rebels to get there unless they fly over him magically. Do you understand? So when people say that to me, I'm like, it doesn't make sense, bro. Like, come on, look at the map and you will see. And even if you go and look at the Russian maps that, majority of people use, there's an app called LiveUAMaps that
Yes.
most people use. If you look at the Russians, because that is a Russian map,
Okay.
they've shown that the rebels are nowhere near that area. So if the Russians who are allied to Bashar are telling you it, I'm sorry, like, how can we deny it? The other reasoning is, like I said, that Iran is a heavy, heavy ally to Bashar al-Assad and is also fighting against Israel. But people say, for the sake of the Palestinians, the Syrians shouldn't fight against Iran. Now, I'm sorry, but that example sounds a bit like the Zionist kind of example, where you say, oh, if somebody comes into your house and slaps you, you basically say, he's doing some good, so let's not do nothing to him. It doesn't make any sense. At the same, like, okay, Hezbollah is fighting and Iran's mercenaries or Hezbollah are fighting against Israel, but Iran and Hezbollah actively got involved in the war in Syria. The Syrian people are not fighting them because of their tie to what you call it, of their fight against Israel. The Syrian people are fighting them because they fought against the Syrians. Do you understand? And like I said, if somebody comes into your house and shoots your mum, you're not gonna be like, oh, you know what? And someone else comes to you and says, you know what, bro, but he's an amazing guy, you know what he does? He protects people. You're gonna be like, I don't care. The guy hurt my family. I don't care what he does. I don't care if he's got 50 cats and he looks after them. Do you understand? For me, I'm getting back my honor, my what you call it, justice. And I'm not saying to anyone to go and kill people and do ABC. I'm a humanitarian aid worker. I'm just trying to explain the situation for you guys. So that is why the Syrians do not like Hezbollah. The Syrians do not like Iran because of their active involvement in the conflict. And there's many videos of them on the front lines themselves with their militias. It's not just air support, it's not just money. This is them standing there fighting against the Syrians.
Right, right. Well, I think that's all. We don't know what's going on at the moment. We're just watching as it goes on. Obviously, we're hoping for safety and protection for the Syrian people. That's above all the most important thing.
Protection of the Syrian people that have been going on in this war now for 13, close to 14 years. And Smala, like the Palestinians had a 75-year now coming into 70 or 76 year war now turned genocide. The Syrians have also had a long-lasting war. It didn't start today. It didn't start yesterday. It didn't start 3 days ago. This has been going on for a long time. And of course, yes, we agree that there is outside forces to play, but the Syrian people themselves are happy for the victories because they want to go home. They want to feel the hope that one day that they can return to their homes, just like the Palestinians want to feel the hope that one day that they can return to their homes also.
Show him and his charity some support and like, follow, and share while you're at it. This has been Pulse of It.